Today, we're going to unpack the Frank Calabrese Jr. interview. I got a very special guest on the Armchair NBA. Hello, Tom Lemecki here with the latest edition of the Armchair NBA. As I said earlier, I'm going to be having some co-hosts, going to be having some up-and-coming creators. This creator, I consider him a friend. His name is Adrian Martinez, the Invest in Yourself podcast. He also has a clothing line. Adrian Martinez, welcome to the Armchair NBA.
Thanks, man. Thank you for letting me come on, man. I appreciate this, Tom. This is going to be good.
It's my pleasure. So speaking of clothes, the new merch is there. Show him your shirt. He's rocking the Armchair NBA Italia shirt. I appreciate that, Adrian. We got the Mark, he got Safai shirt, the RJ Rogers special, My Wife Hates Me. The most popular shirt, disappointingly to me, I was hoping it was going to be Napoli, but the most popular shirt is the Sicilia shirt. We got Puglia, Napoli, and more. So today's agenda is we're going to be unpacking the Frank Calabrese Jr. interview. Admittedly, I'm not as strong on the Chicago outfit. So I went in there kind of fresh, if you will. I went in there with no bias, and I learned a lot. You interviewed Frank, Adrian, right?
Yeah, I did. I interviewed him maybe about probably a month or two ago. You know, he reached out to me. You know, I reached out to him maybe like a year ago, and he's like, not right now. And then I'm sure that's probably what happened because you did one with him the same time as me. So I was like, okay, yeah, he's probably doing interviews again. So let me reach back out and stuff. But yeah, it was pretty good. And I didn't really know a bunch about the Chicago
guys. And just as another note, that's what happens when creators collaborate. Please give a sub to Invest in Yourself podcast. Check Adrian out. He's a good guy. He has a great cadre of interviews. We'll kind of go through that a little bit later. It's about collaboration. It's about working together. And I'm like super happy to support another creator and help him out any way I can. So let's jump right in. We're going to unpack the Frank Calabrese interview. You think about the Chicago outfit. What do you think about? You think about Al Capone? You think about maybe Tony Ricardo? Interesting, Adrian. There was only two current turncoats that were made men in the Chicago outfit. One, I think he committed suicide or he died. And the second was Nick Calabrese's Frank's brother. Did you know that by chance?
I didn't know there was only two, but you know, that is, I mean, they do operate different. You know, there was plenty of associates, you know, I mean, that were around and stuff. But no, I didn't know there was only two.
That was a big learning for me. Even here a little bit about more recently, Operation Family Secrets. Our next guest had to make the gut-wrenching decision to change his life. We're here with Frank Calabrese Jr. on the next Armchair NBA. Oh, my dramatic open.
I like that.
All right, this fast for a little bit. You know, I admittedly, I always
say something different in Chicago than New York was there was one family instead of five.
Yeah, I always wondered. Carlo Gambino tried to make one family in New York at one point. I think there would have been 1,000 guys at the time. He wasn't unable to do it, even though he was that powerful. I always kind of wondered, would New York stay powerful if it was one family? Adrian, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it is, you know, I think there'd probably be a lot less beefing and drama, you know, going on between the families and stuff. But, you know, I mean, as we've seen with a lot of the guys we've interviewed, I mean, there's always that treachery that seems to, you know, come into place with that.
That's right.
And also in Chicago, you weren't supposed to bring your family into this.
Yeah, so different than Sicily, Calabria, and Napoli, typically have generational mafiosi, even for New York. But it looks like in Chicago, they get a different kind of situation. They want to do it as a way to get out. You don't want your kids in it. What kind of vibe did you get from Calabria?
Well, when he was telling me about that, the same thing he told you, I thought, you know, it was completely different from, you know, New York. And, you know, so to me, it seemed like he was being pretty genuine, you know, in what he was telling me. And I thought he was pretty good. And, you know, his story with his whole dad, you know, I mean, which we'll get into, you know, but I thought it was, you know, pretty rough. You know, it's got to be rough growing up, especially being exposed to that as a young kid.
Exactly.
Life, your sons, you're supposed to live a better life for.
And you could tell I think he's haunted by it.
Yeah.
Over the years with Tony Ricardo and Paul Rica, they tried to go underground more. So a lot of stuff was underground. So growing up, I really didn't know what my dad did or in my neighborhood. So I grew up at Grand and Harlem, Elmwood Park.
I find that interesting because most guys that I've interviewed in life, and I know you have as well, they're almost like I was born into it. I was combed for it. I was groomed for it. Where it seems like for the most part, he was kind of how do I say this? He was shielded from it a bit.
Yeah, and a lot of the guys they really do. They're like groomed in it. Like I was saying with the whole New York thing. They want them. From what I heard, from the interviews, that's what they want their kids to be in. But they want them to be smart about it. But
Exactly.
Frank's dad, I think he slowly brought him in, or he was trying to make him smart. And he was trying to make him street smart and school smart.
Yeah,
But
which is interesting. Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
My dad was from Brandon, Ogden. My mother was from Washington Boulevard on the West Side Irish. So in my neighborhood, our fathers were underground. We didn't have an idea of what they did. We knew they were a little different. Didn't pay much attention to it. Um, as I got towards the end of grammar school, there's some stuff in the papers, and then 72, The Godfather came out, 74, Part 2.
Meg.
So we started putting two together, but it was never presented to us, so we didn't think much of it, and it wasn't out in the open like in New York. So, we were taught to go to school for work.
Now, describe a little bit. So when I set this up, what was your relationship with your father growing up?
Growing up, my father was a good guy.
Sorry, Adrian, a little bit of ambiance noise. I got the kid screaming in the background, other kid running. This is what happens when you have 4 kids, Adrian.
yeah, no, I understand, man.
He was tough, but he was all about family. He had a lot of friends. We always had big gatherings. My dad never spoiled us and never was flashy.
Yeah, it seems like kind of the way he describes it, at least kind of his formative years, was a decent father. Did you get the same take?
Yeah, and like he said, his dad was very low key about what he was doing. But at the time, he said his dad was a complete different person, which eventually he slowly turned into this, monster serial killer.
Yeah.
We never wanted for anything, but we were never spoiled. He taught us manners.
Okay, so it's kind of given the setup. Let me just kind of fast forward a little bit.
Rica, Johnny Torrio, El Capone, they all originated in New York. So it was all mine.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. All the big mobsters from Chicago were from New York originally. So I thought that was interesting as well.
Yeah, that is.
2000s, early to the 2000s, when you had the Colombo War in New York, 2 Colombo Wars, the Castellano hit and that kind of stuff. There was kind of Pax outfit, meaning like peace. Yeah, I mean, so my research, and again, the war might have been some going ons in terms of war in the past, but recent history shows that the Chicago outfit has pretty much been at peace with each other, no big wars. And again, I think it's a testament to just, being one family,
Yeah, that probably really stopped a whole lot of internal. I mean, it's all internal, so they're not gonna go and try and if they're gonna do something, they got to get permission. You would think because everybody knows each other, and
exactly. And there's no, you're not fighting over territories, and it's all one capo per area or whatever that is.
In the outfit,
right.
For a while, they kind of adopted that less or no violence, and that was part of the reason for the strength. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, they were going more legit. Government's getting stronger. They got a lot.
Yeah, it just the other thing is, and again, I know Adrian, I don't expect to be a super expert, but my impression always has been that the outfit was always kind of interwoven in society in Chicago, was always kind of a certain level of legitimacy, infiltrate a legitimate business. Is that something that you interviewed a few guys yourself and did some research? Is that something you found as well?
Yeah, definitely. Especially from what Frank would told me, it was that a lot of the times these guys had full-time jobs. You know what I mean? And also they had to get some ownership in some kind of companies and stuff. But yeah, they were pretty legit. But at the nighttime, that's when things would go. That's when they were doing their Chicago outfit kind of stuff. So they had a lot of legitness to them. But there was also some criminal stuff going on as well.
Well, the other thing is, and I know, like in Italy, in the old school kind of guys, you could be like a butcher, you can be a carpenter, you could be kind of a regular guy. You had your regular job in fabric society, but you also, were made mafioso.
Yeah.
For ways to make money and more legit ways to make money, and especially blowing things up was really bad. For some reason, you blow some up, the government's all over you.
Yeah.
So there was a time in the late '80s and the '90s where there wasn't a lot of violence, and everybody was making money.
What was your first racket?
As a kid, I started out in peep shows with my uncle going to collect.
Yeah, Adrian, what was your take? I mean, he kind of shared what is he was more of a money guy. So what he was doing, like Shylocking, what was his rackets?
Yeah, definitely. He said he was a loan shark, and he was doing, kind of the. I don't think he did a little bit of the bookie stuff, but
Yeah.
I didn't hear the peep show. What is that? When I interviewed him, isn't it like
before,
sexual?
before your time, there used to be like you put a quarter. So I heard you put a quarter in, and like a thing goes up, and it's either a live woman like dancing
Okay.
around, kind of like a strip club type thing, or there's like a video, and you're in like a booth, or so I heard.
Okay, yeah, I know what you mean now.
I also learned loan sharking. Loan sharking was big.
There it is.
Yeah, I think he was a money guy. Did pretty well for himself.
Yeah.
Kind of was semi-legitimate, obviously, but semi-crooked. Had the father who was, powerhouse. One thing I do remiss on the interview is not to get all like psychological, but I didn't deep dive into like the true like nature of their relationship. I would have loved to love that dynamic a little bit more. That's why you do these unpackings. But I have a feeling that for him to do what he did, he obviously had to begrudge his father a little bit,
Right. Yeah.
Dad at one point had one of the biggest crews, if not the biggest. We never had less than $1 million on the street at any given time.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Harder than average, about 10% a week, 520.
So you got 100K coming in just on big.
Yeah, and there were a lot of ways to make money. There were places that paid protection. Yeah, street tax. Excuse me.
Yeah, so a pizza, right, in Italy, but the extortion, I believe, as far as I know, kind of ended at maybe the latest on the streets in the like maybe late 80s, mid 80s, shopkeepers and stuff, Italian shopkeepers. But it looks like in his generation, it looks like it was still around,
Yeah. And do you recall what era he was around in the
Yeah,
90s?
I think he was kind of like late 80s, early 90s.
Okay. Yeah.
And
So
then maybe up to the like mid 90s.
yeah. So in Chicago, I guess it was a little bit different than New York if they were still having that going on.
Yeah, I find that interesting.
And there was legitimate stuff too. You making legitimate money.
So you were not a street guy per se, but you're obviously getting groomed by a maid guy. Your uncle's a maid guy. And now you're 17, 18 years old. Did you, attend college?
He also started real young too. You kind of talked to a lot of guys. And like when you hear like when I started at 13, 14 years old, that's like other generation. The guy's like not that much older than me. And like he started out very young. I also found that, pretty interesting as well,
Yeah. And like the way that they like he was saying, like, when he started, it was just little things at first, just like similar stories, that we hear from other guys we interviewed, but that's how it starts. Just little things like that. But, his dad being who he was and his uncle being who he was, I mean, stuff's going to kind of come over fast if you let it happen. You know what I mean?
Let me ask you a question, Adrian. When you do these interviews, right? And I don't know how you do it, but what I try to do is, as good or a bad person as they are, I try to find to relate to them in some way and empathize in some way and relate in some way. During your interviews, do you do the same?
Yeah, I absolutely do, because we're all people and stuff, and whether they did some horrible stuff, I mean, that's not what they're doing now, and they're trying to change. I mean, yeah, a lot of people are not going to like that, but I try to be very open-minded and try to come to some kind of level with them, because they're giving me the time to do an interview, what I mean? And I don't feel it'd be right to just bash them, what I mean? So I want to get to know like what's in their head. Why would they do that? Do they regret that? But I'm not gonna push on them and give them shit for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. In what way did you relate to Frank?
Well, when he was talking about his stuff with his father, I was just like, I've had issues and stuff with my dad and stuff as well. Not as near as
we all.
yeah, right. Not as near as with Frank, but so you kind of come down to that level. Okay, father, son, being young, this is what I saw.
You mean he didn't try to kill you?
No, no. Maybe a few fist fights and stuff, but nothing like that.
Well, fisticuffs, but no gun in the mouth.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. So when I interview, and again, that's why I like to unpack, is I get really fascinated when people hit like these pivot points or forks in the road. And he's probably at this point 17-year-old kid, and like kind of can go, this way and the legitimate life, or go this way and kind of the mafioso life. Then obviously he committed to the mafioso life. But those decisions in life are what make or break us, right? There's probably comes down to me, even being 46 years old. I could probably whittle it down to 5 or 6 decisions I made that charted the course. That's why I get so fascinated by these, Adrian. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what, I agree with that, man, because, you can either go one way in life or you can go the other way. And like, you never know how big a decision that is until, like you said, you get older and mature, but we got to roll with what we go with. You know what I mean? We can't go back.
Exactly.
So the more I did for my dad, the more he's seen of him and me. And he started bringing me into this more and more. And because he couldn't bring me in life, he would always say, "You're my secret weapon."
Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems like he liked what he saw, could probably make money with the kid, obviously trusted him. But the same token is, I don't think he was like running to propose to him for membership either. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think so either, but at the same time, he really had him kind of on the back burner. Like, yeah, we can do something good with him.
Correct.
So basically, mostly worked with my dad and uncle. Met a few other people that were in the crew, but it wasn't out on the street because I always worked a full-time job. I had a job with the city.
Yeah.
So
He worked for the city. I love that. Exactly. Intertwined in society. That's how it's supposed to be.
That side businesses, I did rehabbing, roofing, whatever I could do to make money. I was always hustling. And so slowly my dad brought me into this more. I wanted to go away to college. I wanted to be a lawyer. When we got out of high school, my dad had this control problem with all of us. He wouldn't let us go away to college, and my 2 brothers were going.
That's an old school thing. A funny story: when I was 17 years old, I wanted to go away to school. My mother was like, "You could either go away to school or I'll buy you a car." And I was like, "Really? I have that option?" She's like, "Yeah." And one Saturday, she's like, "Oh," I'm like, "What are we doing today?" She goes, "Oh, we're going to get your car." I'm like, "I thought I had an option." She's like, "Not really." And she, God bless her, she didn't have a lot of money. We did not have a lot of money growing up. But at 17 years old, she did get me a car.
No, that is funny. And I was going to say, with the whole control thing, he'll get into it. I don't think he mentioned on your interview, but he said his dad was controlling, I think, his finances until all of his money until he was like in his 30s.
Yeah, something where like it was almost like he held on to it, and then when he kind of started to need it, he was getting a little bit of the brush off, right?
Yeah, yep, and that's when he, we'll get into it once it comes up. Exactly. What he did with it.
Yeah.
So he said instead of going to college,
well, he kind of took some back, but we'll get to that.
Job, and at night I worked with him. At some point, I bought into this.
Did you okay, so I myself, my family, my coach family, our family's from Italy, and we were not a connected family, but we had members of our family married into some pretty substantial people, and being from Italy, we had a little more access to like guys from the side and that kind of stuff. However, my experience always has been the mob families kind of hung out.
Yeah, I still stick with this, and this is to this day. Anybody I know who's a connected family hung out, vacationed, had dinner with connected families. So I'll give you an example. I had a cousin of mine who married into that life, and he was much closer with that connected family and other connected families that weren't blood than we were blood. And then as a result, we kind of became estranged,
Oh, wow. So that's kind of the, what would you say causes that? I mean, is this
because it's you have a different life, for example, if you are like a traditional Italian family, you're going to have a patriarchy. So like the guy is in and out of jail, so like for me, although like my father wasn't around, he wasn't in jail at least, like where like my buddy is like, "Oh yeah, where's your father?" "Oh, he's on the Italian vacation for 6 years," and so you're kind of in and out of jail. Maybe they have to give like financial support for each other. They could commiserate a little better. They understand each other a little better. Again, they vacation a little better. Maybe, maybe they're wealthier because they were gangsters and had cash and went to nicer vacations. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, but I just kind of find out that like connected families kind of hung out with connected families over their bloodline. That's just been my personal experience.
Mob families, the non-mob families stayed away from them by hook or crook, And
fast for a little bit.
My dad didn't. Over the years, as the government was getting stronger, he didn't want to hang around with the crew. What we would do is we'd do business together. But we didn't do it out on the corner and where everybody can see it. We met that meeting under the cover of darkness, constantly moving. Okay.
Yeah, I always felt that the outfit was also a little bit more covert. Like there was social clubs up until the 2000s where people kind of hung out until Messino closed it for the Bananos, and others kind of walked away. Even to this day, you go to 18th Avenue, to certain cafes that are with certain families, people still hang out. Yeah, I think it's obviously an Italian thing, but I think it's lesser in Chicago versus New York.
Yeah, and Frank, when I interviewed him as well, he said that that they were so quiet about stuff that him and his dad would meet in the bathroom and turn the vent on and just talking there and turn the shower water on and everything like that. So yeah, there were.
I also heard, and I spoke to them a little bit afterwards, but I'm doing a little bit more on Chicago, and then it's pretty often will they meet another member. Obviously, you have to still be introduced as a amico nostra, cosa nostra, and one of the things about it is a lot of times they'll meet somebody, and then later on find out they were a made guy, and not even know it.
Wow. See, so they don't even say that.
What's that?
They don't even make it apparent that they are that.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to be introduced, but I know that there's a lot of them, but it's that secretive.
Yeah. But once a month, he would have a dinner at a restaurant or something in a back room or something where all the guys would come in, and that was our socializing. So pretty much all the guys I hung around with were all my friends they weren't in the life. And then there were guys I worked with that were, but I didn't hang around with them.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. So he did business with guys in the life, but didn't socialize. And again, I kind of talking to everybody I know in the life, it was their vocation, their job, obviously, but their whole socialization, their social structure was also about the life too.
Yeah, that's very true. So I guess that's probably a smart move to keep business and friends with friends. You know what I mean?
Especially when it is just business.
Yeah.
Your uncle.
Yeah, Nick Calabrese again. He's the only guy to flip that made the stand.
Yeah.
There is at least for me in my research, a fair amount about your father, respectfully, but your uncle not so much. Just a little bit about Nick Calabrese.
Sure. So my uncle graduated high school. My dad didn't graduate. He just graduated grammar school. But my uncle graduated Steinman's in Chicago on the West Side, same school that Tony Spilotro, a lot of guys went to. My uncle.
Yeah, something, Adrian?
What'd you say?
Oh, I thought you had something. Sorry.
Oh, no. But
he joined the Navy right after high school. He actually volunteered during the Vietnam War. He was a radio operator with top secret clearance on the Bainbridge and Enterprise. So he's always volunteering for the most dangerous mission. He gets home. My dad gets him a job working on the Amtrak building when they were building it as an iron worker. And he really didn't like that job. And there was a guy he knew. There was only one.
Yeah, so the Calabrese family, meaning legacy, his grandfather, I don't think were in the life, right? I think it was Frank and Nick got into the life, but I don't think the grandfather was in the life, right?
I don't think so. He didn't say anything about that to me, but I'm his uncle that he's talking about right now. He was I think a Vietnam vet, right?
Yeah,
he was in the war, yeah, and he came out and just didn't want to adapt to regular life, I think it was, or wanted some kind of different job, and that's how he ended up, being with Frank's dad.
Yeah, and they both wind up, getting made, and then again, just find it interesting.
One guy that died was a guy he knew that tripped over some lunch boxes and died. Fell a few stories. My uncle didn't want to do that job no more. In 1970, my uncle told my dad that he wanted to join him in the life.
Okay, so obviously Frank Sr. got in first, and then Nick.
Yeah. So that's where my uncle came in. And again, my dad kept my uncle very low key. A lot of people didn't know. Most people on the street did not know how deeply involved my dad and my uncle were. Over the years, my dad and my uncle were part of a crew that the bosses had picked, and they wanted somebody killed and wanted it done in a timely manner.
Yeah, they had a lot of bodies between them. What was it, 8 or something for the uncle?
The uncle, he had 14, I think it was, and that's what he confessed to when family secrets and all that, and then he went into witness protection, because he had to with whatever.
And then the father, 5 was it? What was the father? Do you remember?
I don't remember. It might have been 5 or 8. Maybe
or
that's
convicted of 5, but many more, whatever it was. We'll drop a link below or drop a comment below. I know we got some mobologists watching and who know it offhand if they could comment below. But that's like serial killer numbers,
Yeah, and I don't know. Did he tell you about the Calabrese necktie?
Not really. I don't think so. Go ahead.
Okay, so that his father, when he would kill people, he would make sure that they were dead, and he would go from ear to ear, with a knife,
Yikes.
and and just slice them up, and make sure they were dead, and I was just like, wow, that was really gruesome, you know what I mean? But that's when I guess he kind of was really, noticing his father was changing, you know what I mean?
You know what I love about this, and because from being an Italian, I could say this if you will. It's like if anybody else did it, it's kind of like crazy or immoral or dirtbag or bad. But like if it's a mob and it's Italian, it's cool. It's like, but it's not.
No, I know what you mean, and it's just something else.
Called the Wild Ones. They were another crew that was very good at killing too. So you had the Chinatown crew, which my gang was part of, and the Wild Ones was more out the Cicero Berwyn area. Those were the two go-to crews. A lot of people didn't know that on the street. This all came out in the trial. Most people thought we just gave out money and some booking. That was it. And that's what my dad wanted. So my uncle was very low-key. Most guys thought he was just kind of like my dad's lackey, but he was much more than that. And we were fine with everybody thinking that. We drove Fords and Chevys. We didn't drive fancy cars.
Yeah, they were old school, which, again, fly below the radar screen, don't socialize, let them think we're money guys, but we're really hitters. I mean, it's a formula generally for success in that life,
Yeah. You weren't supposed to be a spacon.
No.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So one of the things about the Al Capone era, right? And those, we have a lot of what I call mobologists watch this, but they're really into like the history of it. And believe it or not, LCM was already in Chicago, Unione Siciliana, which was this.
Yeah, I got that wrong. The Sicilian Union was a respected representative of the Sicilians that were there. There were mafioso that were in it, but it wasn't a mafia organization. I kind of got corrected by a Chicago mobologist, which I respect. His name is Tony, good guy. But yeah, I got corrected on that.
Sicilian Union. And Al Capone pretty much turned it on his.
But yeah, but the Jenner brothers were the Cosa Nostra at the time, and he took that over pretty quickly.
100% Italian. You had to kill on behalf.
Yeah, and I don't know about now, but the outfit stayed pretty steady on the 100% Italian thing.
For the organization before you can ask them. And very seldom did they ever open up the book.
Yeah, I don't think they make a lot of guys either. I was given some really, really, really detailed intel on the outfit. I'm betting it to do a show. How many made men do you think there are? Obviously, could be wrong on my assumption, but take a guess.
Oh, man, I don't even know. I mean, I thought, at the beginning you said there's only like 3 of them.
According to a reliable source, 50.
50.
Hundreds of associates, maybe even thousands of associates, but 50 actual button guys. And from a pretty reliable source. We're still working and vetting out the information. When you get a source, you try to, hopefully you do this. If not, you should. Whenever you get a source, do your best to try to triplicate it. So, get 3 sources if you could for each piece.
Yeah.
They weren't making guys like they were in New York. In fact, there was a story that there was a guy in New York making people and charging them $100,000 for a butt. So it became a business for some people.
Yeah.
Chicago.
Yeah. Oh God, I'm just reading about that. I don't know why I am drawing a blank, but the guy who was selling buttons was killed. I think they even accused Anastasia doing that as well.
Really?
A very important person. That's why I think they called it the outfit too. You didn't have to be Italian to be part of the organization. And look up Gus Alex. If you go back, here's a guy that was very important, up working with the top guys all the time. Okay, could never be made because he was Greek.
That's kind of like John A. Light. All the work that he put in for the, mob, he was just an associate.
Correct. And obviously he's outbidding the Sen, so obviously couldn't get his button.
Right.
So,
did you interview A. Light yet?
Yeah, I did. He's a good guy.
Cool.
You had to be 100% Italian. During our trial, it came out that one of the bosses.
Had a lot of big interviews for New Show. God bless.
Thanks, man.
I do believe that somehow was hidden. Somehow. And whoever, when they got made, and I believe he got made the same time my dad and my uncle did, somehow that escaped. Now, I've talked to guys from New York, Sammy the Bull. I've talked to a lot of other guys. They said it changed. At first, you had to be 100% Italian, and then it went to the father had to be 100%.
Yeah, I think in New York now, it's father.
100%.
Oh, okay.
Got it. Now, what about?
I would argue it should be mother, because the mother's who really raises you in an Italian family, but that's another here and there.
What about? So okay, that makes sense. Okay, the other thing about the outfit, there was one family, right? And the uncle was literally the second since the beginning, only the second made member informant for from to when they started to when your uncle flipped. This only the second made guy versus New York, it was countless, tens or hundreds, right? Why do you think the outfit maybe had less informants versus New York?
Well, first of all, I always thought my uncle was the first. Who was the other guy?
I have to forgive me.
I still forget, but whoever it was wound up dying. He might have killed himself, but he wound up dying. He never took the stand. So he really was the first person to take the stand.
Okay.
Okay. I got to look into that. That's good to know.
I got to do more research, Adrian. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember watching this. I remember his reaction. I thought I got a little laugh out of that.
You're like, Tom, you idiot.
Being on my father's side all the time, I heard a lot that was going on, and I knew it was going through my dad and my uncle. And they were, when they did things, it was like the military. It was a need to know. There were other guys. They didn't bring everything.
Yeah, that's the other thing about New York. It's like people that I speak to, even to this day, if something happens, it's like a lot of the washwomen where need to know basis. That's how like kind of terrorists operate in cells, and it seems like the outfit operated the same way.
Yeah, and then to kind of add on to that, I mean, his dad ended up in a terrorist unit.
Yeah, ironically, right?
Yeah,
ironically.
Guys made. I want you guys to all get to know one another. So you didn't know a lot of things that happened. Even when they killed the Spilotros, they didn't want the body to be found. They rounded up all the other guys at the house to leave, and somebody stayed behind. And my uncle didn't know who to bury the bodies, so that you didn't know.
Yeah, that's old school. Sicilians are big on that.
And I think they were just very, very picky on who they brought in.
Quality over quantity.
You didn't get in overnight. Yeah, really had to earn it. And the numbers were smaller, but they were powerful. And part of that power is it was divided. A lot of guys were either street guys who did heavy work, violence, or they were money makers. And they had both. And the people that were running it, used the people for what they were best for. At one time, these crews, like I said, when they
he probably never, even as associate and as a son of a captain, he probably never even met who the boss was.
Yeah, you really think about
you know
that.
What I mean?
Yeah, I've never heard him talk about it. So no, that is a good point.
Yeah,
it was a crew that went, just like the military, special forces team. Later on in the years, it got sloppy because they were putting guys together that never worked together. So that was one of the, So yeah, it was very, very orchestrated and regimented the way they ran things from what I've seen when I was around it.
So it looks like by having that one family structure, you had operational efficiency, right? And people were in the right role at the right time.
I always got associated with the business.
Yeah, I like that though about you, man.
Comes into play. Now, what about were there advantages to having a one family? I know Carla gave me at one point try to rush everybody up and make it one.
They still had territories, so technically you belong to a certain territory, and you.
All right, we covered this. Let me fast for a little bit.
Yeah.
We want to see some of your paychecks because we didn't want to bury you. Because if we bury you,
let's talk about this. We can unpack this a little bit. He had, and his father, despite being a killer, it seems like they weren't pigs about collecting money. It seemed like they tried to work with you. They tried to be fair. Let's be honest. They were still bad people. They probably took over your business, but it seemed they had more of like a business approach towards things versus just kind of like go right for the beat you up type thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would say so because you know what he's about to touch on is like, yeah, they wouldn't kill you because then you can't pay them. You know what I mean? And if he were, but at the same time, they weren't going to beat you up right away either. They would, they would try and be reasonable about it, as according to him.
And it seems that not everybody's gonna run the FBI, but even back then they were worried about it. So it looks like they try to work with you and they try to, and again, a business approach towards Cosa Nostra.
Yeah.
Who's gonna call the FBI? Your wife. Because you're gonna say, oh, I owe these guys money, they're gonna kill me. Now, if you have a problem and you come to us, say you borrowed $5,000 from me at 10% a week, you got to pay a nice chunk.
Sorry, I got a little ambiance.
Hey, no worries, man.
You come and you say, you know what, I can't pay all this money every week. I say, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. This is what my father would do. So I'm going to make your balance $10,000. You pay me $100 a week, it'll come off that 10,000 until you're done. Don't miss no. As long as you're paying, my father was fine with that. Now, if you were a gambler or you were out screwing around and we heard about it, then you'd get a warning, maybe a crack in the side of the head and a finger in your face, or
gun in your mouth.
when you're out on
A
the
gun in your
doing legitimate stuff. Now I'm out there looking for my next score. How am I going to make money?
All right, so I like Frank a lot. I'm going to send this to him, and I do like Frank a lot. I think the greed glands were starting to kick in a little bit. But as he kind of tells his story arc, I kind of feel that like he grew away from his father. He kind of wanted to do other things. There was some resentment. But number two, I think the greed was kicking in. What are your thoughts, Adrian?
Yeah, I really like Frank too. I've got nothing but positive things to say about him. I mean, and he was a great guest, and yeah, I think with everything that was going on through him, I mean, he eventually wanted to get his money back. I mean, and his dad wasn't wanting to give it to him. And he took it, and he ended up taking more on top of that. Because I mean, he just figured that's what he earned. That's what he deserved, and for putting up
What
with all
did
this
he
stuff.
tell you? He took 800K.
Yeah, 800,000.
All right, so I researched, and my research going into the interview was 600K, but he said 800 on both of ours.
Right. So
Pretty big delta. Like another 200K. I wonder what happened. And he did say though, and like kind of go, what happened to it? He did open some businesses. I think he opened up some businesses in Arizona.
Yep.
I think he had a few pizzerias. Then he got found out, so he kind of busted out. But
Yeah,
that's a lot of money though.
Yeah, and he bought a big. I don't know if it was a big house, but he bought a house, paid it off, and I think he got some boats and stuff like that. But yeah, he kind of spent it, but he also invested in a lot of businesses, and his dad eventually did finding out, and I don't know if he touched on your interview, but his dad knocked on the door, came up to him, and he's like, he knew he took it. So then at that point, he's just like, I own you and your whole family now, all your kids and everyone. So you got to report to me.
And then that caused him to probably snap. But not for nothing though. Like it's funny because I like Frank. Again, it's coming from a good place. And I hate to keep prefacing, but like that was a pretty I know he didn't like his father, but that was a pretty shitty move, robbing his old man,
Yeah.
It is an addiction on the street. You're bought all this stuff by some of the best, and you're out there looking for it, and you see things that average people don't see. And there's a hype to it.
You said it a little bit earlier that your story also reminded me a little bit of John Gotti Jr.'s story. I believe John Gotti Jr. in his interview said, my father was a truck driver, I'd be a truck driver, whatever that was. So that kind of resonated a little bit your story and John Jr.'s story. So as you were in this life and as you were getting closer to your father, what did you see and when did it start to go sideways?
Well, I see this life changing like that. So in this life, I learned early on, you got to have two personalities. You got your street and your home, your family. In your street personality, you can't show weakness. Weakness could cause harm to you. And so I see my dad, these parties, these big gatherings, all this stuff, it started changing. And we started noticing.
All right. So I know we had to step away a second, but I was listening. Do you think he was his father's son? You ever hear the expression, my father's son?
No, what's that?
My father's son is like you basically are your father, like innately. Like if your father was a thief, you're a thief. If your father was a thug, you're
Okay.
a thug.
Yeah,
That kind of stuff. And you may try to divert as much as you want away from who you are, but you'll always be your father's son. And I always kind of felt with John Gotti Jr. and use a parallel is I think he always wanted to be his father's son. I see that same parallel here. What do you think about Frank Calabrese and is he his father's son?
Well, I don't know. I would say that, when he was younger, he saw the good side with his dad. So yeah, maybe he kind of wanted to step into that light and, pursue that life. But then, where he's at now with the personality changes, all the murders and the, kind of the serial killer act, I think that's when he's just like, all right, man, I think, to me, I think that's when he kind of like, was like, all right, I don't want to be a part of this no more.
True. Enough is enough.
Over the years, family members, my dad developed three personalities. He had that good guy home personality. He also had that gangster dad street smarts. But he started to become a sociopathic killer.
But you know what's interesting is I see the migration of him knowing his father as his father, the strict Italian father, right? And he talks about his different sides. As he becomes an adult and as he goes into the life, it seems like he had access finally to his father's that side, right? The mafioso, the killer, right?
Yeah.
And then like he didn't know that, and it was like maybe like went in with like rose-colored glasses, and then now it's like, oh shit, you know what? My father's a bad dude, you know?
Yeah, no, that is a good point because, as a young kid, he probably didn't see that as much, versus, okay, you're an adult now, and this is what's really going on.
Exactly.
I didn't learn till years later. I mean, I knew he was killing people, but, over the years, it was like more and more and more. His personality started blending.
It seemed like his father started to digress in terms of his sociopathic tendencies, got more controlling, more paranoid, and hence killed more people.
Yeah.
And I'm noticing this life is not what my dad said it was going to be about. He's not being who he was going to be. Not only me.
All right. So let's kind of unpack this a little bit before we wrap up. What was your takeaway? Obviously, we're going to put a link below to the. Actually, I'm going to put it above the original interview, so you can go back if you want to watch it in its entirety. Most of the people might have saw it, so that's why they're watching the unpacking. But give me your takeaways from the interview, Adrian.
Well, like I said, he's a really good guy. From what he was before, and so now he's trying to do positive. He's got a lot of good stuff going on, but I think that he grew up in this life, and that's what his father showed him. That's what he was around, and he got wrapped up in it. And he's seen the good side of his dad, but then like we were talking about when he got older, that's when shit got real, and you really was able to see that. So, I understand, he stole money from his dad and all that, which, if you get tired of a person, and especially if it's your dad, I mean, I could see someone just being like, all right, fuck it. I mean, because you're not as worried about it because, oh, it's your dad. I mean, he's like, he might be a serial killer and all this, like he even said before, but it's your dad. You don't think that it's going to happen, but especially if that's all the money that you work for and everything, I can see why he would do that, but I'm not justifying or saying that that's right or anything, the whole situation. But, overall, I think Frank's, doing good. He's made his own business in his own book and everything. That's good, but that doesn't mean I justify and say, oh, everything that he did was good. I mean, whatever happened, and that's where he is today. So that's what I'm judging from.
Let me ask you this, because I've interviewed a lot of informants, because I figure that's the only way you can learn. You have a pretty strong dossier for a newer guy. It took me years to get the same interviews you guys got in weeks. You, Colby, so God bless. My hat's off. But I hate to say this. They all seem to like have this arc, Then it's like, but my father was killing people, so I wanted whatever. And I was in jail and they took my money. It seems like it was all great until it wasn't. And then it wasn't. And then it's kind of like an excuse. You know what I mean? Like, what consistency? How many informants have you interviewed so far?
Roughly? Probably more than 10.
Damn.
15,
Okay.
10 probably, I would say. And I've had guys that never did. Like Frank DiMatteo and his buddy Anthony DeLuca. That's one of his buddies from the Gallo crew. Chicky Ciccatelli.
He didn't rat either.
Tommy Stiggs. You've had him on and stuff, but
got it.
Yeah, and I had I hear from both sides. What I mean, and overall, none of them have promoted or said join this life. So that's why for me, that's why I do invest in yourself. That's why I think okay, they can leave a positive message after the end of the interview, and we can get something positive out of this, even if the cool stories that everybody wants to hear. But at the same time, I ask them, what if a kid comes up to you, and says they want to join this life, what are you going to tell them? And they're like, no, this ain't the life that you want to be.
There's no like social club.
Right, no, and that's what they say. Those days are done. Those days are done. That's what they say. And that was the 80s, 90s, whatever. But that's kind of what I think about them. And
I'm not letting you off the hook, Adrian, before we wrap up.
Yeah.
What's the commonality in the informants as to why? Like, if you had to take the eight of the informants that you did, or whatever, 10 or whatever, what was a commonality as to why they informed? My personal belief, and I'm not knocking anybody individually, but it's always like somebody else's fault. Why do you think?
Yeah, usually it's the people they're around, and someone starts cooperating, or they had their boss or their mentor that was cooperating, Larry Mazza's, his situation with Greg Scarpa. But, that's usually what it comes down to, that it was someone else that was starting to rat or churn or, something like that. And ultimately that's what they do too. So, I mean, I guess that you don't really know their situation until you're in it. That's what a lot of them say. So, they did what they did, and we're here to report.
Love it. All right. Plug your show before we wrap up.
Okay. My show is Invest in Yourself. I got the podcast, the clothing. I'll be sure to send you the links, Tom, and you can put them in the description. And yeah, and that's pretty much what I got, the podcast and clothing brand going on. So invest in yourself. So the links will be in this description. And Tom, I appreciate you having me come on. I've never done one of these before, like the unpacking, but I've watched yours that you did with the Jason. Bobby Luisi. Yeah, Jason, yeah. But the whole Bobby Luisi thing. And then, I watched Frank one. I do a lot of my research off of your show. So, I appreciate you putting out this stuff, man. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on, man.
Like I said, been very fortunate. You guys have been great and supportive of the show. Support the smaller shows. Let's make them bigger shows. Invest in Yourself podcast, Armchair MBA, Frank Calabrese Unpacking. Thank you for watching.